You knew something was wrong before anyone admitted it, not because you were suspicious of everyone, not because you wanted drama, but because your heart became unsettled in a place where it used to feel safe. A conversation changed its tone. A door that had always opened suddenly became difficult. Someone smiled in front of you, yet their words reached you later through another mouth, twisted and heavier than you had spoken them. You tried to ignore the feeling at first, telling yourself to be fair, to assume good, to make excuses, as Islam teaches. But the unease stayed. It followed you into Salah. It sat beside you when you checked your phone and saw that your name had been left out again. It pressed on your chest when people became strangely quiet after you entered the room. And in that moment, the test was not only what they were doing. The test was what you would become after sensing it. Would you let anger make you reckless? Would you let hurt turn your tongue into a weapon? Would you expose yourself while trying to expose them? Or would you stand still long enough to see how Allah protects a servant who refuses to lose themselves in the fire others tried to start? There are moments when Allah does not show you everything at once because your heart is still learning restraint. He lets the signs come slowly, one inconsistency at a time, until your certainty is not built on panic, but on basira, a deeper seeing. You may have wanted one dramatic proof, one message, one confession, one public moment where everyone finally understood. But Allah often exposes a hidden plan by first exposing the state of your own heart. He shows you whether you're attached to being believed, whether you're addicted to defending your image, whether you can be patient when your name is being carried in rooms you cannot enter. This is where the awakening begins, not with noise, but with the painful discipline of not reacting before Allah has completed what He is revealing. At first, being blocked feels personal in the ugliest way. You replay everything, searching for the exact moment someone decided you were a threat, a problem, or an inconvenience. You remember the help you gave, the silence you kept, the chances you offered, and still, you find yourself treated like the difficult one. Maybe they excluded you from a decision you had every right to know about. Maybe they made your sincerity look like ambition, your boundaries look like arrogance, your quietness look like guilt. Maybe they placed themselves between you and an opportunity, not with an open attack, but with careful suggestions, half-truths, and soft warnings to others. That kind of harm is confusing because it does not always leave visible bruises. It leaves hesitation. It makes you second-guess your own memory. It makes you wonder whether speaking up will make things worse. A believer in that position may sit on the edge of the bed after Fajr, phone in hand, typing a long explanation and deleting it again, because one part of the heart wants justice now, and another part knows that anger is not the same as guidance. This is not weakness. This is the battlefield nobody sees. Saber is not pretending nothing hurts, it is feeling the sting and still refusing to become unjust. Tawakkul is not sitting back while people harm you. It is taking clean steps without believing that your panic is what keeps you safe. You may document what needs documenting. You may seek advice from someone trustworthy. You may set a boundary, leave a room, decline a conversation, or protect your work. But you do it with a heart that knows Allah is not absent from hidden corners. The people who tried to block you may have thought their plan was safe because no one else noticed. Yet they forgot that concealment from people is not concealment from the one who knows what is whispered before it is spoken. The false interpretation is to think that exposure must look like humiliation. Some people imagine divine justice only as a scene where everyone gathers, the truth is announced, and the ones who wrong them are forced to lower their heads. But Islam does not teach us to become drunk on the downfall of others. Sometimes the first person Allah saves you from is the version of yourself that wanted revenge more than healing. Sometimes He exposes the plan by letting you see the pattern, clearly enough to stop cooperating with your own harm. You notice that every time you share good news with a certain person, discouragement follows. Every time you speak from the heart, your words somehow return to you damaged. Every time you are close to making progress, an unnecessary conflict appears, pulling your energy away from what matters. The exposure is not always loud. It may be the moment you stop explaining your intentions to someone, committed to misunderstanding them. It may be the calm you feel when a door closes, and instead of collapsing, you realize you have been protected from entering a place where your soul would have been constantly negotiated. That is a sharp kind of mercy. It hurts because it removes what you wanted, but it heals because it removes what would have drained you. When this lands in your heart, let it soften you instead of hardening you. And if this reflection is helping you recognize the difference between patience and self-betrayal, you may quietly like the video as a small way of marking that realization. The important thing is not whether people clap for your innocence. The important thing is whether Allah keeps your heart from becoming a mirror of the harm done to you. A plan against you can be exposed without you becoming obsessed with the planners. Their character can reveal itself over time, but your character is revealed in the waiting. There are two ways a person responds when they sense they are being quietly opposed. One reaction is immediate and uncontrolled. They start collecting every look, every delay, every change in tone as evidence. They begin speaking to anyone who will listen. They turn suspicion into certainty too quickly, and because their pain is real, they believe every interpretation that supports it must also be true. This path feels powerful for a moment because anger gives the illusion of control, but it usually scatters the heart. It makes Salah heavy. It turns conversations into traps. It can even cause a person to wrong someone who did not actually wrong them. And the other reaction is slower and harder. The believer pauses. They ask Allah for protection from being deceived and from becoming unjust. They do not deny what they are seeing, but they do not worship their own perception either. They observe, they verify, they take advice from someone wise, not from someone who only feeds their outrage. They stop giving sensitive information to people who have shown they cannot handle it with a manner. They choose fewer words, cleaner boundaries, and more doer. That restraint may look passive to outsiders, but inwardly it requires immense strength. Imagine being in a meeting where someone subtly takes credit for your effort, and the room looks at them as if the idea was theirs. Your face gets warm, your chest tightens. The old you would have interrupted sharply, not only to correct the record, but to wound them back. But this time, you breathe. You speak only what is needed, calm, factual, measured. Later, alone in your car, you feel the tears come because restraint still hurts. You tell Allah what you did not say in the room. You ask Him to place the truth where it belongs. That night, you sleep with pain, but not with regret. This is spiritual discipline in real life. It is not glamorous. It is not a quote on a screen. It is the private victory of refusing to let someone else's manipulation choose your manners for you. Nuance matters because not every closed door is sabotage, and not every uncomfortable person is an enemy. Sometimes a delay is simply a delay. Sometimes someone disagrees with you without plotting against you. Sometimes your own sensitivity, shaped by past wounds, can make ordinary distance feel like rejection. A spiritually mature believer does not call every inconvenience a hidden attack. Basira is not paranoia with religious language. It is clarity joined with humility. You ask yourself honest questions. Did I hear this directly, or am I building a story from fragments? Have I taken the proper means, or am I expecting Allah to validate my assumptions without evidence? Am I seeking justice, or am I secretly craving the emotional satisfaction of being proven right? These questions do not weaken your case. They purify your heart. They protect you from becoming unfair while asking Allah to protect you from unfairness. At the same time, Islam doesn't ask you to ignore repeated harm in the name of being nice. If someone consistently twists your words, you do not keep handing them your private thoughts. If a group repeatedly excludes you, you do not yield for a seat at a table where your dignity is treated as optional. If a person apologizes but continues the same hidden behavior, you forgive for Allah's sake. Without pretending, trust has been restored. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. Mercy and naivety are not the same thing. A believer can have a soft heart and a locked door. This is where many people get confused. They think trusting Allah means staying available to every person who has already shown them harm. But tawakkul also means trusting Allah enough to leave what He is making clear. It means you do not need to curse the people who blocked you, but you also do not need to keep standing in the hallway they control. Sometimes divine protection comes as an inner refusal. You no longer feel desperate to be chosen by people who only valued you when you were useful, quiet, or easy to manage. Then, without you forcing it, small things begin to surface. A person who avoided your eyes suddenly says something that confirms what you had sensed. A message is sent to the wrong place. A timeline does not match. Someone repeats a version of events that contains a detail they could only know if they had been part of the conversation behind your back. Or the exposure comes more gently. The opportunity you were blocked from becomes chaotic, and you realize Allah spared you from a space that looked attractive from the outside but was rotten with pressure, politics, and hidden conditions. You may not receive an apology. You may never hear the full story, but your heart receives enough to stop arguing with reality. This is one of the quiet ways Allah defends His servant. He does not always hand you the entire file. Sometimes He gives you one page, and that page is enough to leave. There is mercy in not knowing every cruel sentence spoken about you. There is mercy in not seeing every hand that moved against you. Total knowledge would not always heal you. Sometimes it would only feed the wound. Allah reveals what is necessary for guidance, not what your ego demands for satisfaction. They think of how often a believer prays, "Show me the truth as truth and help me follow it." That a dua is not only about enemies or obvious dangers. It is also about the hidden attachments that make us stay too long, explain too much, trust too quickly, or fight battles that were never ours to fight. When Allah exposes a plan, the exposure may be internal first. Your stomach no longer drops when they leave you out. Your hands no longer shake before opening their message. You no longer rehearse speeches in the shower, trying to win a court that Allah never asked you to attend. The chain breaks quietly. The same person who once controlled your mood now becomes information, not authority. There is a particular loneliness that comes before clarity. It is the loneliness of being misunderstood while still being commanded to remain just. You cannot tell everyone what you know, because some of it is not yet complete. You cannot defend yourself fully, because doing so would expose private matters, involve innocent people, or drag your soul into a level of ugliness you know Allah dislikes. So you carry it carefully. You show up to work, you answer family messages, you pray with a distracted heart, and then bring your mind back again and again. You make wudu while fighting the urge to send one last paragraph. You hear your name mentioned in a tone that tells you the story has traveled, and you choose not to chase it through every mouth. This is not because you do not care. It is because you are learning that dignity is also a form of worship. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was harmed by words, accusations, rejection, and betrayal, yet his strength was never the strength of chaos. His trust in Allah did not make him careless, but it kept him from becoming small in response to smallness. That example matters when your own heart wants to shrink into bitterness. You may want to ask, why did Allah let them get this far? But sometimes the distance they are allowed to walk reveals what they were carrying all along. A hidden intention may remain invisible in the beginning, but time has a way of pulling it into daylight. The people who manipulate often become tired of maintaining different versions of themselves. Their stories begin to conflict, their kindness becomes conditional, their concern starts to sound like control, and you, because you did not rush, are able to see without being consumed. That is a gift. The loneliness was not emptiness. It was separation from the noise long enough for your inner sight to sharpen. You were not abandoned in the silence. You were being taught how to hear what panic would have drowned out. Still, you must guard your heart after the exposure. Many people survive the plot but fail the aftermath. Once they realize they were right, they become attached to the feeling of vindication. They replay the proof, tell the story too often, and slowly the wound becomes an identity. That is another trap. If Allah showed you what was hidden, it was not so you could build your life around those who tried to block you. It was so you could walk cleaner, wiser, and lighter. Ask yourself this directly. When did Allah show you the truth about a situation only after you stopped trying to force people to understand you? You can share your answer in the comments if it feels sincere, because someone else may recognize their own test through your patience, not through the details of who hurt you. The goal is not to gather people around your pain. The goal is to remember that Allah's justice is precise and His protection is often quieter than our expectations. There is a difference between telling the truth when it is necessary and feeding the nafs with the story of how wronged you were. And sometimes you must report harm, clarify facts, or protect others from being deceived. Islam is not a command to enable manipulation. But even when you speak, speak with weight, not with poison. Say what is needed, leave what is merely satisfying. Do not decorate the truth with exaggeration, because you are afraid the plain version will not be enough. If Allah is your witness, you do not need to make the story more dramatic for people to feel something. And when people finally begin to see what you saw, resist the urge to say, "I told you." Let the truth stand without your ego leaning on it. The exposure is not your throne. It is your exit. It is the sign on the road telling you where not to return with the same innocence. What was revealed should make you more humble, not more suspicious, more disciplined, not more proud, more dependent on Allah, not more addicted to watching others fall. The deeper wisdom is that being blocked by people can sometimes redirect you toward a path you would not have chosen with comfort. You may have wanted acceptance in a certain circle, recognition in a certain workplace, peace in a certain relationship, or partnership with people whose approval meant more to you than you admitted. When they blocked you, it felt like loss. But after the first shock passed, you started noticing what their presence had been costing you. You had been editing your personality to avoid their reactions. You had been hiding your growth because it made them uneasy. You had been asking permission from people who benefited from your hesitation. The closed door exposed them, but it also exposed your own attachment to being validated by them. And that is where purification enters. Allah may allow a painful obstruction to reveal a dependency that was quietly weakening your tawheed, not because wanting human support is wrong, but because needing the wrong people to approve your obedience can make you delay what Allah has already made clear. A believer might think, I cannot move unless they understand me, unless they clear my name, unless they admit what they did. But Allah can move your life without their confession. He can place distance where you were too emotionally tied to leave. He can make their plan collapse through its own contradictions. He can replace your need to be seen by them with the steadier comfort of being known by Him. That does not mean everything becomes easy. You may still grieve. You may still miss the version of the relationship you thought was real. You may still feel sadness when you remember how naturally you once trusted them. But grief is not a command to return. Missing someone is not always a sign that they belong in your life. Sometimes it only proves that your heart was sincere in a place where sincerity was not protected. The victory is not that they suffer. The victory is that you no longer abandon your peace to keep proving your purity to people committed to confusion. By the end of this test, the most surprising change is not outside you. It is inside your reactions. The same provocation comes, but it no longer drags you. The same person sends a message with a hidden hook and you read it calmly, answer only what is necessary, and return to your day. The same room becomes uncomfortable, but you do not shrink or perform. You have learned to move with adab and awareness at the same time. You have learned that Allah does not need your panic to defend you. He does not need you to ruin your sleep, poison your tongue, or turn every conversation into an investigation. Take the means, yes. Protect your rights, yes. Ask for counsel, keep records when needed, leave harmful spaces, and speak truth where silence would enable injustice. But do not confuse frantic energy with faith. Do not confuse revenge with relief. Do not confuse public exposure with divine care. Sometimes Allah preserves your dignity by not letting you win in the way your wounded self imagined. He gives you something cleaner, a calm heart, a clearer eye, a smaller circle, a stronger prayer, and the ability to walk away before the damage becomes deeper. The plan that was meant to block you may end up revealing who should not travel with you, what you must stop tolerating, and where your trust was misplaced. That is enough. You do not have to stand over the ruins and announce what Allah has shown you. You can simply gather your heart, make dua for protection from oppression and from becoming oppressive, and continue with a steadiness that unsettles falsehood more than any argument could. Let people discover what time reveals. Let Allah handle what your hands cannot reach. A believer who is protected by the most merciful does not always look victorious to the crowd. Sometimes they only look quiet, and later everyone understands why they never had to shout.